it was an extraordinary incident. It happened on the last Friday of June. A small single-engine plane flew into the tallest skyscraper in Beijing. This is the 109-story CITIC Tower, the headquarters of one of China's biggest conglomerates. Now, initially, China covered this up, pretended it hadn't happened, even though there was video of this plane falling to the ground. And most recently, we've seen an explanation that somehow blamed it on a character called Mr. Liu, who apparently was suffering from anxiety and had suicidal tendencies. But the thing just doesn't add up. There are too many unanswered questions. And once again, it shows that the DNA of the Chinese Communist Party, this almost knee-jerk instinct to lie and to cover up. There are two reasons I think there's always been an instinct with the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party, is your first thing you do is to cover up, to deny something has happened. There's a real paranoia about political instability. There's a real fear of allowing the population to have access to real-time information. And we've seen this in numerous examples, from COVID through to recent train and plane crashes. But this one is particularly intriguing because this tower is a big landmark in Beijing. It's shaped like a traditional Chinese wine bottle. It's a huge building, but significantly it's only about 4 miles from the Chinese leadership compound, Zhongnanhai, which is the Communist Party headquarters. Now, I used to live around the corner from this building in my time in China, and I remember when it was being built, there were rumours that the top floors were being blocked off and had been requisitioned by the party, by the security services, because they were paranoid about the view they gave over the Zhongnanhai leadership compound, which is the other side of Tiananmen Square. This is to the east of Tiananmen Square in a region called Chaoyang. So there's always been a deep paranoia. Now, this crash happened just days before the 150th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party, a big deal for them, which involved President Xi Jinping giving a speech in the Great Hall of the People, a typically paranoid speech about all the threats that China faced. So it was a sensitive time. Now, what makes it also interesting and intriguing is airspace around Beijing is incredibly tightly controlled. It's very, very secure. It's not easy for anything to get in there. Now, according to China's latest version, this was a deeply troubled individual, 66-year-old man, who possibly took his own life. But things don't really add up, because it's very, very hard to get a private pilot's license in China. The number of general aviation planes, as they call them, is about 3,000 or so. Now, imagine in Britain it's 20,000. In the United States it's hundreds of thousands. It is not easy to get your hands on a private plane. It's not easy to get a private pilot's license. It's very difficult to get into Beijing airspace, given the paranoia of the party. So what are we looking at here? Was there a bigger purpose? Was the target possibly the leadership compound itself? Is the cover-up because of that sensitivity? It just doesn't add up that this is all down to a deeply troubled individual, given how difficult it is to get your hands on these planes. Censorship is almost knee-jerk with the party. The instinct is to cover up. The instinct is always to lie. There's a paranoia about instability. There's a paranoia about giving too much information to the people, of course, but rumour thrives in that sort of in that sort of environment. But what was so interesting about this was the extent that they went to cover up. We've seen a lot, we've heard a lot about Chinese AI chatbots, which are becoming very popular globally, but the danger that they embody Communist Party values and deep censorship. Now, chatbots themselves were quickly censored. People were going to some of China's most popular AI chatbots saying, what happened? What happened in Chaoyang? What happened at CITIC Tower? And they were getting answers like, oh, nothing happened. It's all a scurrilous Western social media conspiracy. It's all fake news. And so they went to these great lengths to reprogram the chatbots in order that anybody that went to them thinking, oh, you know, an AI chatbot, I mean, these things are smart, but reprogramming them so that they would deny that anything had happened. And of course, that all looked a bit stupid come this weekend because they've now admitted that something did happen, but of course are spinning yet another story that it was a deeply troubled individual that possibly committed suicide, you know, all personal, nothing to see here, go away. Well, the censorship is pretty extreme in China of social media, of the internet. It's policed quite rigorously by the Chinese Communist Party. There's a deep paranoia, but of course it is counterproductive because it can just fuel the most outlandish rumours, as this one no doubt will. I mean, this comes soon after a huge purge of the Chinese military by Xi Jinping. Only the latest in a purge of institutions allegedly for corruption, but usually his political opponents. The guy's made a lot of enemies out there, so it'll inevitably fuel speculation that perhaps this was somebody trying to send a signal to the party, somebody trying to cause damage to the party, somebody trying to undermine it. It's often China's, the Communist Party's strategy in the way it tries to control information is counterproductive because people have ways. I mean, often Chinese authoritarianism is a bit like a Swiss cheese. You know, young internet users, netizens jump from one hole to the other. Rumours spread. People use VPNs. They get their hands on information, and it'll once again undermine the credibility of the party because they'll end up looking pretty ridiculous. There is flight data out there showing that this small plane almost collided with a commercial jet, a Hainan Airlines jet that was out there as it was flying in towards Beijing. You know, we've seen this so many times. COVID-19 cover up. 4 years ago, a Boeing 737 jet plunged from the sky in China. American investigators suggest that this could well have been pilot suicide, but still there's been no report come out of China. It's another cover-up. It's almost knee-jerk. It's in the DNA of the party that information must be closely held. But one of the interesting things about this, has been a lot of hype about Chinese technology, about China developing what they call a low-altitude economy, which is drones, flying cars, all this sort of paraphernalia, which has been tested in numerous places. Now, this is not going to be a particular boost to that economy, given the paranoia of the party and given what's happened so close to the leadership compound. So there are all sorts of knock-ons for the party, none of them particularly good in its view. It's terrified of instability. It's terrified of, you know, you've got a party that has no room for independent thought, no room for independent media. You know, the party is everything. The party wants to be in every classroom, in every laboratory, in every boardroom. It is terrified of the free flow of information. But there are incidents like this that just make them look ridiculous, because when there's video out there, when there are sources of information that not even China, with all its great firewall, with all its control of the internet, with all its censorship, can deny reality as much as the Communist Party would like to do so. It merely fuels speculation and it undermines their credibility. Where people are speculating wildly in all sorts of different directions simply because the government is not providing information. But it could well be, and it almost certainly is the case, that there is enormous embarrassment that this secure area has been breached so close to the leadership compound. I mean, it's very hard. If you imagine the centre of Beijing, Tiananmen Square at the heart, this is just to the east, maybe 3 miles miles to the east of Tiananmen Square. The leadership compound is just the other side of Tiananmen Square, in the northwest corner. It's very, very close. And this is a party which was so paranoid about this building that the rumour was it took control of the top floors so that people would not be able to use the observation deck to look down towards Tiananmen Square with a clear line of sight into the leadership compound. These are very paranoid individuals that run China, and there will most certainly be an acute sense of embarrassment that the security so close to the heart of the city, the heart of power, can be breached apparently in such a straightforward way. And it does beg questions about the credibility of Chinese defences. You know, in whether it's the Iran war, the Ukraine war, we've seen the enormous power of drone warfare, of asymmetrical warfare. And this will be something which will be preying on the minds of China's leadership. Whatever the motives of the individual that did it, the fact that they could get so close to the heart of Chinese power, for them will be quite chilling. It's intriguing, and as always with China, it's such a murky system, it's such an opaque system that getting beneath the surface of what's really going on behind the scenes in China, it's always going to be difficult. But you get incidents like this that shed light on the paranoia, or on the blatant lying of the party, which do undermine the credibility. But I imagine behind the scenes, this has created an enormous stir, especially at a time when the top ranks of the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, have been purged by Xi Jinping, apparently in the name of rooting out corruption, but almost certainly because he regarded them as political opponents. And a lot of people, particularly in the States, have said, well, when you purge the entire leadership of the military, it doesn't, how ready are they to fight? How efficient is this organization when you're purging so many people? And this will also play into that narrative. How ready is the People's Liberation Army? We build it up sometime as being this formidable beast, harassing, threatening Taiwan. But then an incident like this takes place, and you do wonder about their readiness and their skills and their awareness.